All right, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Pitch and Tonic podcast. I am your co-host, Sarah Jean Favrin, and we've got
Morrow.
And our lovely guest, once again, Gabrielle Friedman.
What's up?
If you didn't tune into last week's podcast, Gabrielle went to Cornish College of the Arts with both Kyle and I. Musical theater student extraordinaire, and if you haven't listened to last week's podcast, you definitely should. We talk about some really great things, quarantine, the liberal arts experience, all of that good stuff. Yeah, hopefully you guys are doing good. Everyone's
doing fierce, I'm like nowadays I'm like 50% kombucha. I think I have one every day.
I started making my own kombucha. It's weird.
So scared of that. What's that like?
It's a little gross. I'm not gonna lie. And it's been sitting in my pantry, and I want to try it again, but I also don't want to touch it.
I am so sure that if I do it, I will make a homemade bomb. Like, I'm just not even gonna. I won't even try.
Everyone in, like, my whole family is like, I'm not gonna try it. It kind of tastes like vinegar, and I'm like, honestly, at this point, it kind of is like vinegar.
Aww.
So, but yeah, so we should jump right in it. And this is just a continuation of last week, so we're in our same clothes. So.
Gonna touch on like things from last week, but also like I think this is going to be like the musical theater nerd episode because I'm gonna get into some stuff.
Yes.
So sort of the thing on everybody's minds right now is like representation. Who's being represented? What stories do we see represented, and who is representing those stories? And I like for those of you listening, because I forget that podcasts are purely like auditory experience. I am a Black woman. I am mixed. I'm Black and white, and I am pretty light-skinned. And with that comes a lot of privilege, and I've seen this weird spike in representation of people that look like me. And I think, it's always sort of persisted, but in the 90s in media, in Black media specifically, I thought that it was always pretty diverse in like shades and complexions. And now we've got something that a lot of people call the Netflix effect. It's a bunch of girls that look like me or lighter with like loose curls and hazel eyes and whatever. I don't have hazel eyes, but you know what I mean. And that's sort of like what we see representing Blackness. And while that is like a valid part of Blackness, it is not the only identity. And it's really like weird to just see like people that look like me but for the wrong reasons, you know what I mean? It's like, oh great, like I'm so happy that these shows exist, but I wish we would have less room. I wish we were making more room for like dark-skinned actors and dark-skinned artists in general, especially in theater. We've got this weird legacy in theater of starting in like having our roots in like cabaret and minstrelsy, and to take that and then bring it into a modern perspective, it's hard not to reconcile with that history. And I think we all kind of want to say, oh well, we're past that. we don't do yellow face anymore and we don't do blackface anymore. But we do, and it happens quite a lot, actually. And especially in opera.
Oh,
And
I know. I have so many
yeah,
problems with
right.
it.
It's like, why aren't we dealing with that? Because it's not that far in the past. It's maybe 5 years in the past, if we're being honest.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. I'm hoping that it's something that we're moving past, but now I'm seeing sort of this, I guess it's like the opposite side of the same coin, where we are casting productions that are really diverse, but we're only casting them for the sake of diversity. And what I mean by that is, if you have a show and you're like, oh, we've got this show and we've got like a Black Cinderella and Middle Eastern Prince Charming, and it's like, that's awesome. Like, I hope that they're good also, you know what I mean? Like, I hope that the only reason you cast them is not because they are people of color. And I mean, they usually are, but that's not how they advertise it, right? They're not like, we have a really talented Cinderella. They're like, we have a Black Cinderella. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, it's still just a role. Yeah. I'm rambling, but yeah,
No,
it
I
happens
definitely see
far too
that.
often.
Yeah, I definitely see that a lot, where it's just like, we have this person who is this race playing this role,
Mhm.
no mention of their actual talent.
Yeah. And I I don't know. I hope that people don't look at me that way, but I had to tell a director one time that, like, when I'm on stage, like, people will see a Black person first. They're not going to see me as anything else. So, like, you can ignore the fact that I'm Black, but like an audience won't. So that has to come into the room when we're like doing table work, when we're talking about the motivations for the character. Like, that's it's really on the directors and the casting directors, and that's just not something that I'm seeing as much. There's a movement towards what's called color conscious casting, which I think is really awesome. I hope to see more of it in the future, because in the past we had color blind casting, which was basically like, well, we'll cast you and it doesn't matter what race you are. Like, we're just looking at you for your talent. And you can say that, but it's just not true. Like, you can't just look at somebody and be like, I don't see that you're Asian, Kyle. I just see you as a very talented musician, and that is it. You are a blank slate to me. Like, come on.
It's not how it works.
Yeah. So, in Seattle, I had this like panel of casting directors come to our class and sort of talk on professional etiquette. And I was like, I gotta ask this question because I know that literally no one else in my class will. And I was like, do you guys do color conscious casting? Like, is the casting process in Seattle color conscious or color blind? And the response was like, well, color conscious casting is the hope. That's the goal. And I'm like, it's it's one or the other. Like, that's kind of a yes or no answer. I'm not really sure what that's the goal even means. You are the casting directors. So like, what are you doing?
It's like, you have the say in this, just change it.
Exactly. It's no one's job but yours. Like, sure, you have to consult with producers and like know the demographic of people who are seeing theater, which is, mostly old white people. But
Mhm.
at the same time, like, you are the catalyst for change.
So true. I wonder if it's, I always, because like in music, right, and in opera, it's like the new work versus the old work, right?
Mhm.
And it's like in the new work, I always say it's easier to do this, but it's on the creators like shoulders. It's like write
Yeah.
in people of color.
Right.
For me, at least, it's like when I think of it, I'm like, okay, who is this person going to be playing it? And I'm like, as a like person, like I'm half white, half Asian. I'm like, I want an Asian playing this person,
Right.
right? And I want to give that representation. But in like older works, it's like mainly the ones that are written, well, basically for white people. Let's just say it, right? How should people start approaching that?
I mean, that's a great question. It's I mean, if you look at shows like, I'll just say Hamilton because it's a contemporary example that people will know. You take like traditionally white characters and put people of color in them. And I have seen a lot of praise for doing this, but I can't help but think that at the end of the day, like you're casting people of color to play slave owners, you know? And Hamilton, it's great. It is fun. It's got great music. Some of the performances from the original cast are like, mwah, chef kiss. But uh, you can't ignore that. Like when you're writing a character, you have to include the fact that people of color will play it. It can't just be, oh, well, this is a white character and anybody could play it, because like the white experience is not everybody's experience, you know. That's I think it's something that like composers, playwrights, directors, casting directors, we all have the responsibility to analyze these stories and really like be honest with ourselves. Like, what are we seeing time and time again, and what can we put out there that's new? Because I'll be honest, I don't ever want to see a show like Mixed Dish again. I'm like, I'm tired. I don't want to see somebody be like, I'm too black for the white kids, too white for the black kids. I just feel like it's a tired narrative, and we need to start um giving like roles and giving spaces to people who are marginalized.
It's not just the white story, basically.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not. And it's not just about like the struggle either. It's not about like um man, I can't imagine a time where I haven't seen like some Oscar winning slave movie like everybody's talking about. And I'm like, I think we get it. I think we all know slavery was bad. And the people that don't, like, I don't think they're going out to see movies like that. You know what I mean? So maybe we should stop catering towards white audiences and make things that like we like, make stories that we like and characters that we root for that aren't just like, gosh, my life is hard. If only the white man would accept me.
I think you just said it right there. Is we need to stop catering to the white audience,
Yeah.
and that's what every single, how should I put this? in, representational film or show is catered to, right? It's like,
Right.
look at all these people of color playing these roles because they can do it too, and you're just like, they can do it, and they also have a different story, right? And it's not the stereotype story that everyone hears over and over again.
Right. I think especially as people of color, we need to have each other in the room too, though. I see a lot of media that maybe catered to like Asian people or Latinx people, and there are anti-black notions within it. And so like that's also important to address, is that like while we are making these stories, are we addressing the problems and biases within our communities, or are we just sort of like reiterating the same tropes and like bad jokes that have persisted throughout years and years.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with that. And there's just such embedded, like, I guess, colonialism in so many, mainly in, like, say, like the Filipino community, right? They're just like, let's make sure we're also a minority. Let's also reach out to other minorities.
Right. Yeah. It's I think that was maybe one of the cooler parts about Seattle was like the solidarity in that when you get into these communities, and it is hard to break into them, but once you like find your people, you know, fortunately and unfortunately, you see a lot of the same people at gigs, and you start to like get to know one another and sort of like connect in that way, which is cool. I mean, I've always sort of wanted that as an actor. I think that like one of the biggest reasons why I continue to do musical theater is purely because of that, because I love creating community, and I also love reflecting like some sort of story that maybe somebody in the audience can see, and they'll be like, I see myself in that. And like I just don't think there's any better feeling than, you know, connecting with somebody on a level like that.
Completely agree on that. Yeah. um, so you mentioned community, right? And it's like these little like community pockets of, you know, minority groups that like kind of play for each other, right? And
Right.
it's kind of that, you know, battle between I enjoy, right, playing for these people, but it's always constantly the same people, right?
Yeah.
How do you think we break this up? Because I always wondered that. It's just like, even from a quote unquote like new music standpoint, we play for the same people over and over again, right?
Right. Um, you know, I think that part of it is advertising off of social media. I know that's like kind of a weird thing to say, and people are like, well, that seems counterintuitive, but like, I don't know, there's something about like I would find gigs from like posters on the street, you know, or like in a coffee shop or whatever. Like going to communities where like maybe they don't have access to a lot of arts, and like advertising your shows there and in that way is a way to like, you know, not like just grow a fan base, but also like be like, hey, like these are people that have a maybe a lack of arts or a lack of arts education within these communities, and being like, you can also do this. I know that like I taught theater camp for like 2 years, and while it was like rewarding, it was like a camp that you had to pay money to. So, you know, who's able to afford that? So you have to take that into account when you look at the demographic of kids. And then it was kids that would do it like every summer. And sometimes there were like a few kids that would be like, oh, it's my first time. But if you're able to afford this every summer, you're able to afford lessons outside of summer camp, you know, again, you're seeing like a smaller and smaller pool of kids that are in the arts that are able to continue to do the arts. I hope that in the later years we start having more of an appreciation for art education within communities of color. Um, I can only like speak so much. I have a pretty supportive family when it comes to my career, which I'm really thankful for. But for those who don't, and for like especially men of color whose families are like, no, the arts are feminized. You can't do that. I really hope that we kind of like break from that, because I mean, that's rooted in white supremacy too. The arts are for everyone. It's not just a something reserved for women or for like white people. So Yeah.
Yeah. All that comes to mind are these I guess it was like that wave of nonprofit music schools,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they kind of just came and disappeared.
Right. Yeah. Everybody was like, we're gonna open up a school in the hood, and then just like didn't fund it properly or didn't oversee it, and just kind of like let kids, you know, do what they wanted with it. There's definitely got to be some oversight. And I mean, now that we have a new administration, maybe we'll see some change towards that. I I can't remember if this is true or not, but I think Trump might have taken like a lot of funding away from art and art education during his presidency. Um, so, you know, hey, Biden, if you're listening to this podcast, which I know you are, please allocate some funding.
Yeah, and I think what's most important, you went to an arts high school, correct?
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah,
for
and
like 2 years.
yeah, I went to an arts high school for my freshman year, and then I switched to public school for my life class too.
Hmm.
But I think the most important is like giving these public schools actually money for the arts.
Yeah, it was, man, it was so depressing. Like I was in orchestra like in sixth grade, and it was, it started out as this public school who had like really great funding, and then it just like slowly kind of fizzled out throughout the year, and we had like less instruments, and then like altogether just like they cut the orchestra. It was, I think, the year I after I moved, but that was in the South too. So, you know, like art education isn't a priority. It's all like football in Georgia. They're like, you're gonna go to like Georgia Tech and get your degree in football with a side of touchdown or whatever. I'm not sure if it's clear from these episodes. I don't know anything about sports.
I don't think I don't either. I don't know, Sarah, do you?
I know enough because for some reason, I don't know, I really wanted to fit in, and so I was like, I'm going to be a cheerleader in high school, and I did it, and I made
Oh my
JV.
God, work.
Well,
That's so
okay.
cool.
I mean, I was part of a 7-person squad, and it was JV, and we got the old uniforms. It was definitely like the stereotypical like varsity gets the fun things. We cheer for football, and then JV's like, we cheer for basketball, and nobody shows up or helps us at all. But I did that for 1 year, and I absolutely hated it. And every time we had practice, I could hear from the choir room people practicing for like madrigals, and I was like, I want to do that. And so I just like quit the second I could. But I know enough about sports to get me by. I still don't understand football. I know what a touchdown equals, and I know what a field kick and like I know enough to be able to watch a football game and be like, yes, that was good, or no, that was bad. But that's my space
Yeah,
my
I mean,
knowledge.
basketball, baseball, like those seem straightforward to me, but like when you start doing all of these different moves and like, I don't know, is there math involved? I feel like there's math involved. It's just
There
really
is.
overwhelming.
Yeah.
Um anyways, yeah, so I'm hoping that this trend in representation is something that isn't a trend. It's just something that's, you know, normalized. And I don't know, I guess that starts with people in the writers room.
Mhm.
um I have like a couple of friends who went to college for like theater, wow, I can't even think, like playwriting essentially. And that was a whole like thing in and of itself, because whenever they would do our like play fests, um if you had a show with like even 3 Black people, it was like you gotta like cut corners and search outside of the school, because it's hard to find that many Black people who have free time in their schedule who can do your show. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's which is it sucks, but it's just the unfortunate reality. So I think that a lot of my colleagues might have written things that maybe they just had to because they couldn't write the stories that they wanted to. Um, a really like great example of this is like Sarah Porkalob, who's doing her one woman show, and she's got like all of these other like plays on the side that she's written. And I've seen like so much success from her, probably because she like graduated college and had access to the Seattle community and could do so. While we were in college, it's like, well, I hope you've got like 5 white women in your show, or else you can't really do it.
No.
Yeah, it's I really like I just hope to see some change. I that's the only thing that I can say at this point. Yeah.
And it's really sad because it's where it's like what you said, it's in the writer's room, it's the people in there that have the power to change it.
Mm-hmm.
But then everyone outside is are the people that want the change.
Right. Yeah.
And it's also like uplifting, like being able to like work with people too. Like not only like casting them, like that's step one, but like what if you cast someone and they have like jobs and things like that. Being able to like work with them and accommodate and all that kind of stuff too is really important.
Yeah, and sometimes like as I don't know, I'm speaking for myself, but as a younger person in the arts, I have a hard time like advocating for myself and picking projects that like could financially support me, because I'm like, oh, well, maybe I'm not like experienced enough, or maybe they have this person that they hire every time for this role. And so I think we take on projects that maybe don't pay enough. And I guess what I'm saying is we need to start paying artists more because it's really hard.
Yes.
If you want people to take out like, months at a time or even weeks from their work schedule, like give them a project that can financially support them to do so, or else don't do the project.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I did a show one summer, and I won't like speak ill or tell who it is because I don't want to be that person. Because I think they're doing the best that they could. But they expected I'm pretty sure they expected like a 2 or 3 day a week commitment to rehearsals, and it would be rehearsals for a month, and they would be like 3-hour rehearsals, and it would start at 6 o'clock ish, and it would be in Seattle. So if you worked anywhere outside of the Seattle area, not only did you have to get in your car at 5 o'clock, you had to make sure you were off the clock, that you did not stay a second later. And I remember a lot of my castmates were talking to the director because there was like some really heavy not like heavy arguments, but they were like, you need to put more commitment in. They would kind of say it respectfully, and they would counter like, I might lose my job if I continue to do these hours of rehearsals. Like, you can't keep demanding these things. And they were like, what? You might lose your job? And I'm like, you're demanding all of this stuff from us, and you're paying us. Like, if you took down our pay and divided it up into our time, like, we would be making $1 an hour. So it's crazy.
Oh my God. I auditioned for this show one time, and I won't say too many details about it because I also I like working and I like having good connections with people.
Right.
But it was a show where the contract was equity, like it was an equity house, and halfway in between casting and like choosing for casting, um, myself and a couple of other friends got emails that they were no longer going to pay us. And it was basically just going to be like paid in exposure. And it was a role, I believe, for a Black person, because me and every other Black girl that I knew in Seattle like auditioned for it. And I was like, okay, it's one of those things where it's like, do I ask around if other people are getting paid? Is that unprofessional? Because like it's a little weird that the role that you're casting all these like people of color in might not be paid anymore. So like, yeah, it's, if I have one more person say that they're gonna like pay me an exposure for an equity contract, I think I might put them on blast because that's ridiculous.
Oh, we don't need exposure. We need paychecks.
Yeah.
And that does speak. I mean, like, what you said, if you're going to put on a performance, make sure you have the budget.
Yeah. And I mean, sure, it's expensive to put on shows. Like, nobody's saying the theater's cheap. You got to pay for the rights just to, like, get the script. But I mean, it's something to take into account. I'm not out here like producing shows. I don't have the money to afford that.
Mm-hmm.
So, if that's like, if it's something that you're looking to do, then I don't know, just don't do that in an equity house. Do something like that for a community theater show. But yeah.
Do you want to explain what equity means for the people who don't know it?
Yeah, equity is basically like an actors union. So once you get like an equity contract, you get basically all of the things that a unionized worker would get, like coverage for injury, and they protect you and make sure that you're like getting pay that would coincide with the amount of work that you're doing. It's really great. It's one of the few great things about like theater, is that there's so many protections for you. But basically, if you're a non-equity actor doing an equity show and they're like not gonna pay you, it seems illegal. Like, now that I'm saying it out loud.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know that a lot of young people might hear that and be like, but it's a good opportunity. And I'm here to say, if it was a good opportunity, then they would probably pay you.
Mm-hmm. And I think that is a big misconception for all these young artists. Mm-hmm. For those of our young artists watching, get paid.
Yeah. Value the work that you do, because it does have value. It has monetary value, in fact.
Mm-hmm. And I think for me, it's like kind of a rule of thumb. It's like, if it's like a close friend and I know they don't have money,
I mean, that's different.
I'll do that.
That's not like a
I'll do that. But if it's some like person that I'm just going to audition for who I don't know, get paid. Get paid.
There should be like a master class in how to advocate for yourself as an artist, because we've got like all of these lessons around branding and like, what's your brand? Who do you want to put yourself out as into the world? And I'm like, me, like, I know myself. I need to learn how to like ask people for money without being super awkward. And
it's so awkward where you're like, so this is what I charge.
Yeah.
And you're like, please don't be offended that it's like a little bit higher than I think. Question mark, is it?
I don't even know if like this is an American thing, but Americans like don't value the arts in the way that they should. And so you're already growing up in this culture where you're told not to value art, and here you are like asking people for money. And it's like, sometimes I sing on key. Can you please give me $20?
Oh.
Yeah, it's super weird. For all of our young artists listening, casting directors, writers, all of it, like, do your best to not only advocate for yourself, but like if you pay your actors or any staff that you have, you're gonna have a exponentially better experience. And they're gonna be willing to like work with you, and just be conscious of that. And again, like, if you don't have the money, be upfront about it. I mean, Kyle and I'm going to be upfront right now in our podcast. Like, when we contacted Gabrielle, we were like, we don't have money coming in, but we want to make sure you are compensated for, because you don't want to just like skimp your artists just because they're friends. Like, try to make an effort. Kyle and I are doing our best to make sure that everybody who is a guest on this podcast will be paid, and like, you get to kind of tell us like, what do you value your time at, and we will try our best to honor that. And I think you should be doing that in the casting room, and it's hard, we don't have a ton of time to like continue talking about it, but just like, be a good person. And if you can pay someone to do your taxes, you can pay someone to stand on stage and sing. Like, that should be it.
That's the overall theme. This Black History Month, please pay artists of color. Pay all artists, but especially artists of color.
Yes.
And Black artists, and support Black artists, and go to their shows, share their stuff, give them the money that they ask for. Do not heckle them and be like, are you sure you can't give it to me for this price? Like, just be the ally that you project yourself to be on social media. Thank you.
Yes. All right. That is probably going to be where we end it. Thank you all so much for listening. Thank you to Gabrielle for coming and talking to us on this.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been an absolute treat. Thank you for listening to my ramblings.
Of course. We're happy to accommodate, and happy to let your voice be heard. Again, like, subscribe, comment, rate us 5 stars, do all of the things. Gabrielle will put her info in the description. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you next time. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Goodbye. Thank you.